At the very beginning, I was a kind of a purely abstract artist. I didn't have subject matter and didn't have anything to say about anything. And so I actively looked for subject matter when I changed the way I was painting, when I became, when I reintroduced subject matter into my painting. I looked for subjects. And the first things I painted were the menhirs and dolmens of the Brittany landscape in France. And I lighted on them because they were dramatic subject matter, but they were also emblems of memory, of a sort of deep, ancient memory of that is literally in the landscape. Of course, there's many of them here in Ireland as well, but over the years, I've tended to draw heavily on the imagery of the west of Ireland, in particular Erris in County Mayo, where my mother was from, and I was taken back there every year as a child. And because my work tends to, it's the theme that really underlines a lot of the work is the idea of memory, and how memory, both cultural memory and personal memory, affect our sense of identity, our sense of who we think we are, what we remember, what we choose to remember. And so that's been a kind of a strong theme in my work. Because my mother left Ireland, she went away. She went away to work in England, and that memory of her place of origin was a very strong thing for her. And I suppose that has affected the subjects I choose, but I do strive to find imagery that kind of unlocks deep cultural memory. Well, sometimes paintings develop out of a theme that has been around in my work for a long time, and so that's not as dramatic. But when I'm working with a new subject, that there has to be some kind of breakthrough moment when an idea takes shape. And even though I may not know how that idea is going to be realized, that's a moment. And a specific example I can give you of that would be this painting here, Knocknaloa. I was actively looking for subject matter. I had an exhibition that was scheduled at some point in the future, and I wanted to make paintings that were grounded in the Irish landscape. And it occurred to me that I'd had a conversation with my aunt where she'd actually gone to great lengths to stress the importance of the names of the particular fields that were around the house where she'd grown up, and how some of them were Irish names and some of them were English names. It was kind of a mixture of the two languages. And I thought about this and downed tools effectively and took off to Mayo. Myself and Claire, my wife, we went off and we spent 3 to 5 days just going around these places. And rather than the fields, I actually went around the townlands that surrounded the different townlands, and Knocknaloa was one of them. It's just in from the coast. It's a quite a bare, barren place, and it has a hill. And I discovered the name meant Hill of the Lepers, which is an unusual thing. I think it may have been that it was a place where sick people went in the past. So that was the idea. I had no idea how I was going to do it, how I was going to make the painting, but the idea came. And as a painter, I'm always looking for those kind of moments where you get an idea to do something different to what you've done earlier, and you usually sense if it's got possibilities. So yeah, I actively search for subject matter. In the painting, the process of making the painting, I'd been making some paintings of figures, And I suppose I had in mind the figures that were sort of found in the bogs. There's been several of them in Ireland. They're kind of referenced in Seamus Heaney's poems, who I knew at the time. And so the idea that within the landscape there was actually a living remembrance of the people of the past. So I didn't take photographs or make drawings of Knocknaloa itself. I just absorbed the spirit of the place. And I had in mind that the painting might also be almost like an aerial view of the landscape with a river meandering through it. So in the top right-hand corner of the painting, there is what looks like an arm, an extended arm, but it's also like a hillside. It's like the hill at Knocknaloa. And so things are shifting in and out of focus. And there's also the process of making the painting. I know clearly what I'm trying to do is to make something that's an equivalent, not a view, not something that's picturesque, but something that has an equivalent intensity to the atmosphere that I experienced in the place. And so a lot of the painting is moving slabs of colour around, and the colour is, for me, it was evocative of the colour of the bogs, certain kind of redness of the heather that's there, the shape of the river that cuts through the landscape. And it was kind of resolved in the process of painting it. But when I begin, particularly with something like this, I didn't necessarily have a clear idea of how it was going to finally be visualized. So that's part of the process of painting. And I'd say that in an era which has been dominated by conceptual art, people sometimes find that difficult to understand because they expect a clear explanation. But I think painting is a language of its own, and it gives meaning in a different way. It's a gradual meaning comes through the process of actually making the painting. I suppose I always want my paintings to be compelling in a way, rather than background material. And by compelling, I mean I want them to compel you to look at them, or I hope that the audience begins to notice different things about them. A painting, there are only really two conventions in painting. There's the convention of the window and the object. The painting is a thing, and I want my paintings to be physical things. And so I hope that by prolonged exposure, they become more interesting rather than less interesting, that certain things that are in the paintings are noticed by this exposure. I mean, in the more recent paintings, there's an aesthetic of repair that's going on in the paintings. Some of it is that some of the paintings were made on old sacks which had been repaired. So they were kind of artifacts that people repaired and had their names on. And so they speak of that kind of that past. But the surfaces themselves in all the paintings are meant to be very engaging, and the paintings sometimes are kind of put together almost in the way that we put together memory from glimpses of things we've seen, from things we know. So I hope that the audience is intrigued enough to look, and perhaps it raises up. People bring their own histories to looking at a painting. So you hope that your work connects with an audience.